How's it going? So this is my 1995 Nissan 300ZX. It's a two-seater, 3-liter V6 naturally aspirated, and I'm working on restoring this thing back to its former glory. I've done quite a bit of work on it so far. I fixed a couple decades worth of sketchy wiring hacks and modifications. I've removed 2 alarm systems. I upgraded the stereo system to include Bluetooth and a backup camera. I got some factory black leather seats for it, and I got a set of twin turbo wheels for it as well. It was an automatic transmission car, but I just finished converting it to a manual transmission. Today I want to sort out just a few last little things. There are a few little bits of wiring I need to fix, and I also want to do like an ECU diagnostic and make sure that everything's running perfectly on this car before I bring it back to the track. I do plan on racing this car again against my 1970 Dodge Challenger. I feel like the first time I raced it, I didn't really give it a fair run. It wasn't running well. So I want to get this thing running as best as it can to at least run a respectable time against my Challenger. All right, let's get to it. So I treated myself to a little present today. Look at that beauty. Brand new leather OEM shift knob. All right, let's put this guy on there. It's so beautiful. I like it. So a couple episodes back, I finished my manual swap. Or I guess I should say I almost finished my manual swap. There was one last wire I skipped, which was the neutral switch on the transmission. And some people say online that you can leave it unhooked. Apparently it has to do with some sort of timing adjustment. Here, let's check it out. I did actually find this wire that goes into the transmission. I left it just kind of hanging here. Let's make sure the switch works. All right, so I connected this wire here to the wire, and then I connected it to here. Let's put it on the ground side there. We'll get a very, very good ground. And you can see that there's no sort of continuity between the two. So the switch is open right now, and the car is in gear. So if we put it in neutral, there we go. Take a look. It's well, it changed. I think it's very close to continuity there. The switch is probably a little bit old, so maybe it's not making a perfect connection. Hopefully it's enough of a connection, but we can see that it is at least responding when we put it in neutral and put it in gear. So I'm confident we have the right wire here. Now, supposedly this wire is supposed to be plugged into a pinout on the ECU. I found a lot of sources that said basically pin 44 on the ECU is for both manual and automatic transmission neutral signal. And I did find this chart here which shows pin 44 automatic manual transmission neutral. And it should be a yellow wire with a blue stripe. And I'm hoping that that wire goes all the way out and ends up somewhere around here so I can just connect it back to, I don't know, maybe somewhere in here. We'll see about that. Worst case, I'll run a wire into the ECU area, which is right here underneath the floorboard of the passenger side. All right, so the first step is to get access to that ECU, and then I want to measure continuity from pin 44 to any of these wires here. All right, I got the ECU pulled out, just a couple of bolts there. So by looking at this chart here, you can see the screw in the middle and the notch right there. So that pin 44 is right there, which is on the top left and the 7th one down. And we are looking for a yellow with the blue stripe. All right, so that's the top left there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right there. Yep, that is a yellow with the blue stripe, so that's good. So it does match what they're saying here. So I'm gonna probe that wire with this guy, and we're gonna extend the other end up to the engine bay and start tapping wires and see if we can find some continuity there. All right, well, none of those seem to, at least anything in these plugs here, seem to have continuity with that wire. So I guess that wire doesn't make its way, at least to anything easily accessible over here. Well, anyway, I can spend time trying to find that thing, or I can just wire it directly over there, and we should be good. I suppose the next step is to clip that wire and send it all the way into the engine bay. Gosh, I really don't like clipping factory wires, especially ones going directly into the ECU. But it seems pretty clear to me that that is the transmission safety switch. So I think I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. All right, I got this wire kind of taken out of the pack of wires here, and I guess I just gotta cut it. Oh, I hate doing this. I feel like I'm disarming a bomb. 3, 2, 1. Oh, there we go. I can always put it back to stock if I need to. All right, I got this guy all soldered in, connected in, and I got this wire running all the way under the dash. And I went ahead and just followed the wire for the neutral safety switch all the way around here. I feel better about that. Of course I was tempted to just drill a hole here in the firewall, but I don't like having to do that unless it's absolutely necessary. And I think that should be it. All right, before I bolt this thing back in and put the floorboard back in there, I noticed this little dial thing here, and there is an LED light right here. I've actually read about this online. This is a self-diagnosis, kind of like a check engine light. This car is 1 year before the OBD2, so it's an OBD1 car. Now that I have this thing out, I should probably check this guy. I guess the way to do it, according to Google, is to turn the key into the on position and just twist this knob with a screwdriver, and it should start putting out codes. I'm gonna say that I have 3 codes. I'm sure I'm gonna have something. Maybe not. Maybe everything is perfect. I doubt it. All right, after a few tries there, I finally got it into diagnostic mode, and it gave me a code 55, which means everything is working properly. So no codes are being thrown. That's awesome. I'm pretty surprised, actually. I guess I should have had more faith in my car. So today I want to continue work on trying to make this thing run a little bit better and hopefully try and solve this problem I have with the engine sort of bogging down on acceleration, maybe get a little bit more power out of this thing. And I think this thing is long overdue for a really thorough tune-up. There's a handful of little parts and sensors and things that you kind of just have to replace every so often. There's also a few little common issues that this engine has, and I want to check those out too. Unfortunately, on this engine, for some of these things, you kind of do have to tear the engine down a little bit. I'm going to have to pull off the intake manifold to get to some of these old rubber vacuum hoses that are probably cracked and maybe not holding air anymore. And since I found some issues with my fuel pump a few episodes back, I think one obvious thing to replace is the fuel filter. And this has got to be the easiest fuel filter I've ever seen to change. It's just kind of hanging out here at the top of the engine bay. So I'm going to definitely do that. One thing that kept coming up and that I've heard about was the mass airflow sensor, which I've got this guy already unhooked, and I went ahead and popped this guy off so I can take a look at the air filters, and it looks like the air filters are good. Here's the mass airflow sensor, and this is definitely something I'm going to want to clean out. I also heard, and I'm not 100% sure why, but I heard that maybe your engine temperature sensor can sometimes cause this issue as well. I'm sure the ECU changes the fuel map or how much fuel it's giving the engine depending on temperature or if it thinks it's still warming up, and both of these temperature sensors look pretty old. In fact, it looks like somebody might have done their own sort of crimp here. That's kind of interesting. And they're very cheap, so I'm going to go ahead and replace both of those guys as well. And then lastly, the vacuum lines. That's probably one of the most common reasons why an engine is going to stumble or definitely not idle right or idle too high. I do have a little bit of those issues. It's kind of hard to say because I've been kind of messing around with, the transmission swap and all that stuff. And one thing that I noticed, I took a quick glance because I got this handy vacuum line routing diagram up here, and there aren't too many on this car, luckily. It seems like it's mostly electrical and less vacuum than like the 80s cars were, so that's good. I got that going for me, which is nice. But one thing I couldn't help noticing was this huge vacuum line here going right into the intake manifold is super crunchy. So obviously, you know, it can easily develop cracks, and that could cause a vacuum leak. So this vacuum line seems to travel up through here, and there are bits of rubber here all the way back. They all look very questionable. Even this brake booster vacuum line here has got a little split in it. So, all right, well, I'm gonna get to it. Replacing this fuel filter, replacing these vacuum lines, and I'm excited to see if this improved at all. All right, well, I took the car on a test drive after changing out this fuel filter here, and unfortunately it really didn't change anything. You know, it was an old fuel filter, so I'm happy to change it. It's always good to replace that stuff from time to time, but there is something else going on with this car, and today I want to go a little bit deeper into this tune-up and hopefully try and figure out what's causing this bogging issue that I'm having. So I ordered a bunch of goodies here, some parts. We got some new spark plugs, some OEM spark plugs. We have the intake manifold upper gasket, the plenum gasket, because I'm gonna take off this upper intake manifold. The reason is I wanna change out these valve cover gaskets because I do have a pretty serious leak that's dripping down the back of the engine. I found the source of when I had the transmission out. So all 4 valve covers are gonna get taken off because this thing has 4 valve covers. 2 of them use rubber gaskets. I guess the other 2 use silicone, supposedly. So we'll figure that out when we get there. So let's get going, and fingers crossed that this thing runs better once we're finished. All right, this one was definitely old, miscolored. So I don't know. Maybe that's what it was. I guess there's only one way to find out. Whew, I finally got this thing off of here. I'm sure when I edit this down, it's gonna look like it took me 5 minutes or something, but this took me many, many hours to get this thing off. There are so many little hoses and vacuum lines and a couple of water lines, power connectors, and a lot of them, I would say most of them, are underneath and behind the intake manifold. So just like the hardest place to get to. But I got it out now, so that's good. Everything looks pretty good in here, actually. I will say this gives me a little bit of opportunity to glance down into the valves. I can actually see them from here. I don't know if you can see that. There you go. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see on camera, but when I look down in there, they actually all look really pretty good, like very clean. No like significant buildup or anything like that. You know, the runners here are a little bit dirty, and I'll probably clean those up just a little bit. But from here, the engine looks to be in pretty good shape anyway. All right, I got this thing looking a lot better. The bottom side, not so much, but nobody's gonna end up seeing that anyway, so I'm gonna be lazy and just kind of leave it the way it is. I did my best to clean out these intake ports, I guess the runners, whatever, the best I could. They look pretty oily, as they always do. I know there's a lot of oil just in here and in these sort of like sections here, but there really isn't a good way to clean those. I don't want to take off the whole throttle body thing. I don't have gaskets for these guys, and I'm not sure how all of this stuff comes apart, or more importantly, if I can get it back together. So I think I'll just leave those for now, but I definitely will clean out the throttle bodies. I can get in there pretty good. Now, taking this apart, I did find two things that I thought were kind of suspicious. One had to do with this balancer tube here. It seemed like this side was missing a gasket. I did get new gaskets for these, but I'm pretty sure this one didn't have an O-ring, so that certainly would be a place where a vacuum leak could occur. And the other one had to do with the idle air control valve, and I'll show you. Here's the idle air control valve, and if you can see, that thing bolts on here like that, more or less. And let's see if we can focus on that. You can see some very corroded connections on this guy. Whatever this electrical connection is here, there's two of them, but certainly this one's important. And yeah, it's very corroded. So I wonder if this thing wasn't fully connected and operating correctly. All right, so one last thing I'm gonna do with this guy before starting the reassembly is, here, let me flip this thing back over. I want to take care of something that I've read is recommended, and that's deleting the coolant lines under this thing. There are coolant lines that run up to the throttle bodies, I guess, and these are really hard to get to, and these, they have a tendency to leak. It just kind of introduces a lot of failure points, and supposedly these aren't really that necessary. I'm unsure exactly what they do, but since I'm here in a very warm climate, I'd love to get rid of all this unnecessary complexity. I believe that involves just, unbolting these and capping these off, and I think I'm good to go. All right, much better. That's a lot of stuff that's not gonna leave me broken down on the side of the road now. All right, got the spark plugs changed out, and here are the 4 valve covers. And I guess supposedly these top two, the intake valve covers, use these rubber gaskets here. I have those guys right there, and then the lower ones, which are the exhaust valve gaskets, are just RTV. So I'm gonna have to clean those up really good. I hope that seals. That's kind of weird that it uses only an RTV gasket, but it is what it is. So I did see some evidence of leaking, at least on the inside of the valve cover. You know, some of these spark plug areas had some oil pooled up, and some of it got onto the top of the spark plug. I didn't see any of the spark plugs themselves with oil, which is good. That would indicate that it's coming from maybe like worn out piston rings or something. They all looked okay, like the tip of the spark plug. But as you can see on this guy, there's a good bit of oil on top of it. So that's probably a leaky valve cover, you know, coming from the top. So certainly these guys are leaky and old, and it's going to be a good thing to replace them. And hopefully that stops at least the majority of the oil leaking from the engine. All right, let's get these guys pulled off, and we'll take a look at what our camshafts look like. All right, so I got all 4 valve covers off of this thing, and to me the camshafts look pretty good. It's kind of hard to tell, but I know that, you know, if the lobes are obviously rounded off, that's not a good sign. And these, to me, they look pretty good, like no obvious signs of wear or whatever. So that's always good to see. I'm pretty sure these valve covers have never been replaced, or I should say taken off, especially these exhaust ones, which I think is where most of my leaking was coming from. There are these little sort of like caps that go on the back, right back there. And this thing is just absolutely not rubbery anymore. It's like totally hardened and actually broke apart when I took it out. So I'm really glad that I ordered these. They weren't part of the kit. I had to get them separately, and luckily I did. Cool. All right, so I just have to, I just got to clean these guys off pretty much perfectly. Things like this only seal as good as the cleaning job that you do. So I have to make these surfaces pretty much like brand new. All right, well, I'd say that's pretty good progress. I'd say we're about halfway there. In the next episode, we'll get this all cleaned up, put back together, and maybe we'll fire up the engine. Hopefully everything still works after all of this.